My name is Broderick Bowes. I work with GraceKennedy. GraceKennedy is a company out of Jamaica. My role at GraceKennedy, I'm the SAP Development Manager and the project manager for the OpsVeda project. So GraceKennedy is involved in the distribution and manufacturing of consumer products. We, as I said before, we are a Jamaican company. We have subsidiaries in US, Canada, Belize, the UK, and Ghana in Africa. The basic strategic plan for GraceKennedy is to earn 50% of its revenue and profits outside of Jamaica. From a marketing standpoint or a brand strategy, we aim to be a consumer group. GraceKennedy, as I mentioned before, we are very much intent on growth. We're actually very much in an expansive mode at this point, and operational intelligence is a key part of that kind of expansion. The need to move beyond just reports to having insight into what is happening in crucial areas of business is very important. The second thing I would say is that for us, we were looking for a solution that addresses a wide cross-section of needs. From the standpoint, firstly, in terms of data scope, so not just a solution, a BI solution that is financial, but one that can address operational issues or bring them together. And secondly, to meet the need of a fairly wide cross-section of users. So we aim to secure access and information for analysts, for functional managers, and for executives. The business intelligence thrust started back in 2012. At the time, we had a fairly big project using Business Object, SAP Business Object. That project went for about 3 years. It had two major components to it. It had the aspect to do with the delivery of the back-end data, and the other was, I would call, the presentation layer. The back-end was fairly successful using BW, but the presentation aspect was not successful. And so we essentially had to phase out the project and sought other alternative. And the things I mentioned earlier are some of the lessons learned out of that. So when we came to OpsVeda, we came with our eyes open and clear as to some of the metrics or criteria that would make it a good partner for us. The deployment was significantly simpler than what we experienced before, and it actually took about 8 weeks from my recollection. And I think one of the impressive things about the deployment was that with OpsVeda you didn't get what I would call a black box, and then try to work with it. You kind of get a blank slate, and we had the opportunity to define what was important to us and what we needed, and that made a lot of difference to the deployment and the level of adaptation in the business. While we added a few refinement, I think it came with a lot of dimensions that, especially on the logistics side, where several data sets in say warehouse management or outbound activities were brought together to give the user not just one dimension, but to see a kind of near 360 perspective on what is happening on the outbound side. So you could see, yes, there's a demand. You could see the risk related to delivering that demand, and you could see whether it's going to be realized or not. So with respect to revenue management, we were able to look at lost sales, identify the lost sales and where it's coming from, the reasons that are contributing to it in particular. Yeah. And there were other things like the impact of discounts and the trend in margins. I would say from the business standpoint, discounts are intended to drive volumes, and for our business, and especially our US business where we are fledgling, it's important for us to be able to measure the impact of the level of discount. So with OpsVeda, we are able to pick up the trends and to see exactly what was happening when the discounts were given, what kind of demand impact existed, the impact on margin and the impact on revenue for the time that discounts were given. Inventory management is one of the components, or one of the major tabs in the OpsVeda offering, and it is a very useful, I find, a very useful contributor to the effectiveness of the tool, in that to get a perspective on what's happening with inventory from terms of the aging, which vendor these age inventory relates to, and which group of products are concerned, helps you to narrow down the issues very quickly, so that the user doesn't have to, as it were, tear down the warehouse to find out, suddenly I have all these things here for over 200 days. You can see from a chart the different the aging profile of the inventory, and you can actually drill to see the details of the specific ones. Given our prior experience with the OpsVeda deployment, we started the other way, where we, as I said before, kind of started with a clean slate, and with that clean slate we did a pilot with our US business to get from the business what needs, what questions they needed answered, and have those developed and reflected. And once the pilot was successful, meaning that what the users wanted to see and what was configured and delivered existed, then we felt comfortable to begin to expand its use in the other areas. So currently, we just completed the US, the rollout in the US, and we have 3 different locations in the US, New Jersey, Florida, and Atlanta, and we just completed those 3 locations. And we're currently working on Belize and Canada simultaneously to roll them out as well. We have basically decided that we want to have we're going to partner with OpsVeda on a long-term basis because of the experience so far and the clear potential that we see in the tool. So next we are going to move on to Jamaica, which is the head office and the base, and the more mature aspect of the business, both in terms of activities and SAP use. And in Jamaica we have not just distribution, but we have manufacturing. So the plan is to have all of that integration. We also have in Jamaica retail, and so through the Jamaica leg or segment of the implementation, we'll then kind of get that 360-degree perspective. We'll bring retail, manufacturing, and distribution together. Certainly in our US business, which just started in 2014, we were having, when we started to use OpsVeda, there were signs that we were having high levels of lost sales, and that since OpsVeda, that has given a lot of visibility to those issues. We have seen a significant fall in the levels, both in terms of more accurate measurement of it and no clear indication of when it is likely to arise and the risk or the reasons that are contributing to it, and at the same time what are the actions that need to be taken. So in the last review that I saw, we were significantly down. I don't have the percentage in mind now, but it has been significantly down. We also had a related issue at that warehouse in relation to one of the warehouses in particular, where we would run significantly long hours to get shipment out, and that's because there was not sufficient knowledge at the start of the day as to how much stock. So the stock would be available, but it's not in the pick location, and so you get a lot of zero deliveries. And so with the introduction of OpsVeda, we were able to identify that issue and solve it. So the warehouse could determine at the start of the day not only what the requirements are, but exactly where to find them and the level of replenishment needed to make the orders complete for the day.